Today's video is on the Lost Woods theme from A Link to the Past. This is a very important piece of music because it's the start of a pattern that shows up throughout the Zelda series. In The Legend of Zelda, Koji Kondo often contrasts the key of E major with the key of C major. And this relation is not that intuitive. It's a major third away. But Koji Kondo makes it feel completely natural. And he uses a very interesting technique to do this. And that's what I'm going to explain in this video. So the first line is like this. So we have a progression, green, red, green, red. And our red is our tense dominant function, and our green is what it resolves to. Now this is a very similar sound to the Forest Temple from Ocarina of Time, and also the Lost Woods, because it contains a very specific harmonic device, which we'll talk about later on. The progression used here is not isochronously shifting mode, but it does have a contrast of modes. In this case, we have Ionian or Mixolydian, it's rather ambiguous which one it is, that moves to Phrygian mode. And this movement is pretty far away, as we can see. I played it as Mixolydian, but it could also be. The underlying progression is major 1 flat 2, which is a vamp in this case. He does put the dominant function pedal under the second half of the measure. And this is just the 5 chord. And we get a little bit of that flat 6, 5. So it's a modified 1 flat 2 vamp. And it's the second type of 1 flat 2 vamp where we have a major tonic and a major dominant, giving it a very Phrygian sound. Now I want to hone in on these flat 2 chords, because this is the essence of what Koji Kondo is doing. He's using a concept that I've talked about in a previous video, the Lydian dominant-trichord. So in this diagram, it shows F, G, and B as the dominant trichord. And it shows the Lydian dominant trichord as F, A, and B. And playing the Lydian dominant trichord, you could probably immediately tell that Koji Kondo has used this before, because it's the first 3 notes of the melody of the Lost Woods theme from Ocarina of Time, which is then reversed to make the Song of Healing. So this is something that is a massively important harmonic device for the sound of Zelda. But Koji Kondo is more clever than using this little dominant trichord. He uses it harmonically to achieve modulation by major third, what I was talking about at the beginning of the video. So here's our Lydian dominant trichord, which has a major tendency, and we can tell that it's being used to resolve to a major chord, so this is its typical usage. It's more likely going to move to a major chord. I mean, that's even true in the other chords where it shows up in like the augmented sixth chord, the French augmented sixth chord, or any of the other ones that are shown in the LDT tetrachords down there. In this case, these notes are going to resolve like this. And this feels like a flat 2 to 1. That flat 2 to 1 resolution is called a Phrygian resolution. So then, what Koji Kondo does is he takes the Lydian dominant trichord and he turns it into a dominant trichord. And then he resolves it like a dominant trichord. And all of a sudden, he's in C major. So instead of going, he goes, and now this wants to go here. So now he's in C major. And so he pivoted an entire major third, which is a relation that's typically very difficult to do. But all he did is use this Lydian dominant trichord as the pivot. And I'm going to play the B section to show you how it sounds in context. By turning the Lydian dominant trichord into a dominant trichord and putting the G in the bass, it creates a dominant seventh chord. And it's a dominant seventh chord of C. It's a G dominant 7, which then wants to resolve to C. So now let's take a look at the B section in isolation. What we have at the beginning here, after it resolves to C, is a 1-4-7 progression, which is the very beginning of the major circle of fifths real sequence, which is just the normal circle of fifths, but you retain the interval in the bass, and you also retain the chord quality. So it'll sound something like this. Or if it was minor, which sounds very dark. But we're just using the start of the major circle of fifths real sequence. If it went on, it would go. It could just keep going on, but he doesn't. He stops there. And then once we get to flat 7, he moves from flat 7 back to flat 6 in sort of a deceptive motion, and then does a flat 6, flat 7, 1. Which is as Koji Kondo as you can get of an ending. Now after that, he lands on C major. And what is he going to do to get back to the original key of E major? Absolutely nothing. He just goes back to the key of E major without doing anything to prepare it. which gives you this really colorful C major, E major. But that adds character to the piece. That adds a bit more mischief to a piece that's about a very mysterious forest. Now I'm going to go over the Lydian dominant trichord once more before we finish. We are at an E major chord that moves to an F major chord, but the top note, the fifth, which should be a C natural, is instead a B or a C flat. And then this has these two tendency tones. You have Fa and Ra, which want to resolve down here. And that's how he does that. But then he takes that, he takes the A in it, turns it to a G, and now it can resolve to C. Now he could have just done F, A, B, and resolved to C like that. That sounds perfectly fine. I mean, granted, you do have La and T in the same place, which is kind of weird. Which is why we usually do Sol instead, with the dominant trichord instead of the Lydian dominant trichord. If you did the dominant trichord and resolved it in a Phrygian resolution, it would sound like this, which is a little bit unnerving. It sounds much more natural to use the Lydian dominant trichord to resolve with a Phrygian voice leading solution. So that's it. The footage this time is from Knox Hardigan's channel. I have a Ko-Fi. You can pay me money for my charts. You can go on and buy my charts if you'd like. You can also donate to me on there. And I have a Discord that you can join. And I'll see you in 2 weeks. Good evening.